What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Dark Ether Files podcast. I am Special Agent Spooky Clutter, and today we are going to be discussing and reviewing the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre film released on Netflix and released a few days ago as of recording this. So, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a very interesting franchise. I've only seen the first one, and then I might have seen the early 2000s reboot, and then maybe one of the later films, but I wouldn't call myself a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan. I just wanted to get that out of the way so you guys can understand my perspective on this film. I will say this, though, that I am a fan of the first film. It's been a while since I've seen it, but from what I remember it being a pretty decent horror film, pretty good on suspense and such. So going into this film, I really wasn't expecting too much. I didn't really have high expectations. I was aware that this franchise has had a long history of messed up sequels, just terrible films. Some people like them, other people don't. And so this is yet another sort of soft reboot. I believe that they did that before, where they took a film that was a sequel to the original. And so this is what this 2022 film is trying to do again. And what I've noticed is that some films are following this trend, mainly Halloween. So Halloween has also had a long franchise history with sequels that have been subpar, fans agreeing for the most part that there are certain sequels that are just really bad. And then, of course, you have your reboots for the Halloween franchise with Rob Zombie's Halloween. But what Halloween 2018 did was it set a formula that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is following here. And it's interesting, I guess you could say. So something that myself and some other people have noticed is that the Laurie Strode sort of archetype of the badass female with weapons, the way that she was portrayed in the 2018 film is very similar to Sarah Connor from the Terminator franchise. And myself and another fellow YouTuber who is also a Patreon supporter of ours, J-Man from J-Man's Movie Cave, we sort of came to a conclusion that the Laurie Strode format of the female character that's got a scarred past and is now a gun-wielding badass is more of a copy of Sarah Connor in portrayal. So we can refer to this sort of character format as the as the Sarah Connor formula, or the Sarah Connor format, or Sarah Connor archetype, however you want to title it. The reason I'm saying that is because they do that here in this film, where they set the film years later after the original, being a direct sequel, ignoring everything else that came before. And you have the survivor from the first film coming back many years later to face the killer again. And so that's what happens here, but we'll get to that. So the basic plot synopsis is that a group of young kids, they're not really kids, they're more like college student age. They go to Harlow, Texas, the same town from the original film, and they want to buy property there and basically turn Harlow into a more fruitful town with businesses and bringing revenue to the small town in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And Leatherface is there. He's in an orphanage for some reason. They don't really explain how he got there. And being that this is a sequel from the original, I mean, I guess it makes some sense in this, like him being an orphan and whatnot, but he's just there in the orphanage with this old lady who's like his caretaker, I guess you could say, but she's like really ill. She's got like an oxygen tank she's carrying around with her because she's really sick. And you have these college kids or college age guys, girls, guys, whatever, people come in and they're sort of surveying the place, the town that is, and they go in to the orphanage and they start telling the lady there that they own the property now and that she has to vacate the premises. And basically they start having a little bit of an argument, and then they call the cops, and the cops come and try and take her away because she's not supposed to be at the orphanage anymore, that she was kicked out or something. And this whole situation starts up a chain reaction that leads to Leatherface going on a sort of path of rampage, carnage, and massacring. And then it turns into your typical slasher film. But I have a lot of issues with this film. I'm just going to say this right out of the gate. From my first viewing of it, I didn't enjoy it. When you get into a horror film, there's certain tropes and stereotypes that you sort of expect, and it's kind of like par for the course. With that said, I was hoping that this film would try something different, which in a way they did. The idea of taking Harlow, Texas, and the story being that they're trying to essentially renovate the town, that's something different from the other Texas Chainsaw films. At least that's what I've heard people say. And on that note, it's like, okay, that's something different, but different doesn't always mean good. But I was hoping that this film would sort of change up the formula just a little bit. But it didn't really do that. Everything from the kills to the characters, it was all predictable. It was all very lame. And one of the biggest issues that I have with this film is the characters. I really can't get into these characters, this group of kids that show up here. I mean, our first introduction isn't really the best one. One of the main characters, her name is Melody. She was an ass. I mean, just putting it bluntly, not very likable character whatsoever. Our first introduction for her is she comments on a stereotypical Texan in a diesel truck that pulls up at a gas station, because they're driving towards Harlow and they stop at a gas station, and they stop to get gas or something. But the funny thing is they're driving a Tesla in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Those Teslas don't run on gas. You have to plug it in like you're plugging in a electronic to a wall socket. But so they're driving a Tesla in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and I'm thinking to myself, how are you going to recharge your car when it's in the middle of nowhere? There's no electric plugins. Everything is still, for the most part, I mean, most cars are still on gasoline, good old-fashioned gas. So bringing a Tesla to the middle of nowhere seems like a pretty dumb idea. But regardless of that, they're parked by the gas station. They're just hanging out, relaxing, trying to get ready for the continued journey. And a Texan guy, country boy, pulls up in a diesel truck. He's got a gun on his hip. And Melody makes a comment saying, "How small does your pecker have to be to have a gun that big, to carry around a gun that big?" She didn't say pecker, but you get what I mean. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm sorry, this is supposed to be the cast of characters that we're supposed to be rooting for them. There's only 4 of them, 4 main characters. You have Melody, Lila, Dante, and Ruth. Lila is Melody's sister. Dante is sort of the de facto leader of the group. And then there's Ruth, who's the girlfriend of Dante. And Melody just makes this comment, and one of the prevailing sort of themes or messages in this film is sort of like this anti-gun rant type of thing, because Melody's sister Lila was in a school shooting and she's a survivor. She has this scar on her chest where she was shot, and she was a survivor. And you could see she's looking on her phone, like on Instagram or something, that a whole bunch of anti-gun posts. And it's so ridiculous you're trying to shove in that little message, and you're sort of taking a jab at Texas because Texas is big on guns here. I myself am a Texan, so I know the sort of culture. But Melody makes this comment about the Texan having a small wang because he carries around a gun, and then he says, there's a lot of wild hogs around here, and he's like, you gotta take them out while you can or whatever. And then he said something about his gun being big, and then she responds, well, I've seen bigger, and then they drive off. So our introduction to Melody is not a very good one. And then over the course of the film, they try and make her a little bit more sympathetic. When they get to the orphanage, she's all like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry we have to kick you out or whatever. It's like they try and undo the stupidity that was her introduction, but it really doesn't do anything. And like I said, it devolves into the stereotypical horror slasher territory. And it's predictable. And I think that's one of the best ways to sum up this film, is that it's a very predictable film. And I know that some people are going to say, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a very simple formula. It's my response to that is, yes, you're right from a certain point of view. At the same time, how many other Texas Chainsaw films have we got where it has the same type of formula that we get in your typical slasher film, or even your typical Texas Chainsaw film? We have an entire catalog of Texas Chainsaw films. So my question is, how different is this film from the other films? And why is it that this film is getting so much praise? I mean, look, people can like whatever they like. And what I would say is that if you're a sort of casual horror fan, in the sense that you really just come to horror films for the blood, guts, kills, and what have you, then yeah, you're probably going to enjoy this film. Me, however, I like to have a little bit more depth to my horror films. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have my fair share of enjoyment of Friday the 13th films, and that's about as pretty bare bones as you can get as far as a slasher film is concerned. With that said, my favorites out of the Friday the 13th films have a little bit more story to them, that there's a little bit more investment that you have. One of them being Friday the 13th Part 4, where they introduce a family dynamic, a family unit characters, and we get our introduction to Tommy Jarvis. And so when you see these characters, you want to root for them because they're a family living close to Crystal Lake. They're not part of the typical shenanigans of the stereotypical slutty teenagers that are doing drugs and fornicating and whatnot. You have those characters for sure. They're right next door, but you're also invested in the family characters. You want to root for them. And Part 6 sort of carries that over in the sense that you get Tommy Jarvis back. So your investment in the character, it's like, okay, Tommy's back again. Whether or not that was executed well is up for debate. Excuse me. With that said, I still like to have my investment of good characters, even in horror films. Another favorite horror film of mine, the original Halloween. You have decent character development with Laurie Strode. You get a lot of focus on her. You get a lot of focus on Dr. Loomis. These are characters that you're investing time in. You care about them. So this film, I mean, it has, I would say, out of all the characters, I'd say the only character that has a semblance of character development and a sense of you wanting to root for them would be Lila, the school shooting survivor. And again, they're using the school shooting as a sort of thing like, oh, anti-gun. Like if there wasn't a gun, there wouldn't have been a school shooting. That type of message they want to push. Of course, they're in Texas, and you're also in a horror film. And we'll get to the gun thing here in a little bit because there's something funny about that. So you got the anti-gun thing. You got the jab at, Texans, the stereotypical Texan in the diesel truck with the, baseball cap and flannel shirt or whatever. Just very stereotypical. Something I guess you can expect from the horror genre or the slasher genre. But I want to go ahead and talk about the reintroduction of Sally. So you guys remember she was the survivor from the first Texas Chainsaw film. Very iconic ending where Sally is escaping on the back of a pickup truck, and Leatherface is sort of doing this sort of tantrum dance with the chainsaw. Very iconic. So they bring her back, and again, it's following that sort of Sarah Connor, Laurie Strode format of, all right, all these years later, this character is coming back, and this time she's more prepared. She's a badass. She's got some guns, and she's ready to go, confront the evil. Laurie Strode, evil dies tonight. Right? Evil dies tonight. Yeah. So Sally shows up after Leatherface has gone on his massacre. At this point, he's killed the stereotypical Texan guy. He's killed the cops. He's killed Ruth. Which, quick side note, Ruth decided to go with the cops as they were trying to take the old lady from the orphanage to the hospital. My first question is, why? Like, this character, Ruth, she has no real investment in this old lady. She's just going with the cops to take her to the hospital. And of course, Leatherface is with them. Okay. So she dies. The old lady dies on the way to the hospital. And Leatherface gets pissed off, essentially, because one of the cops lays a hand on Leatherface's hand when Leatherface is trying to turn on her oxygen, trying to bring her back. So then he gets pissed off. I mean, that just triggers him. So he breaks the cop's hand, and the bones that are sticking out, he stabs him in the mouth and the throat. That was a little weird, kind of over the top. I mean, it's a very gruesome kill. And again, if that's what you're going to this movie for, then you're going to enjoy it just fine. It's just certain things just don't really add up. Like, I mean, you got to be like really strong to break a guy's wrist like that, to have the bones sticking out and then to stab him. So Leatherface kills the two cops. He then starts cutting off his adopted mother or caretaker's face and wears it. So that's his new mask, right? And Ruth is still alive. They get into a car crash, and then Leatherface kills her, and then he moves on. So by the time Sally shows up, a lot of people have died, including Dante, and they really, really misuse Sally. Whereas Laurie Strode was a lot more prepared in like Halloween 2018. She had an entire trap setup, which I thought was pretty badass. They took the Laurie Strode, Sarah Connor format and they neutered it to the point where Sally is a complete moron for a few reasons. First reason, so she goes into, I believe it's the orphanage, and she finds Leatherface in his room. He's just sitting there looking at some pictures or something on the wall. And then she starts going on a mini monologue about how she's waited for a long time to find you. And then Leatherface just looks at her, curious or whatever. And then he picks up his chainsaw and he just walks out. Now, she has a shotgun. I don't know what kind of shotgun. That's probably something that Carter could point out. But from the look of it, it's a fairly heavy-duty shotgun. And she's got it pointed right at him. And instead of literally just pulling the trigger to kill him, to kill the guy that killed your friends 50 years ago, she just lets him walk out. And then he starts going on another rampage. And then she starts shooting. Leatherface takes some damage from the shotgun. But the damage that he took was ridiculous. As in, there wasn't any real damage. I'm guessing that she kind of had birdshot in that shotgun because he did not take much damage at all from that shotgun. Because if you were to have like slug rounds or buckshot, the thing about shotguns is that it has a hell of a kickback, and the damage that it can do to a body is devastating. And yes, it's a movie. So some things are supposed to be sort of unrealistic. A sort of suspension of disbelief is required. But that said, a shotgun is a shotgun. And if you got a slug round or buckshot in that weapon, you're going to be sent flying back if you're hit by it. You're going to be taking a lot of damage. And he doesn't take much damage. And he doesn't really get injured to the point where he's like incapacitated, at least until the end. And we'll get to that too. But then Sally gets killed by Leatherface. She gets stabbed by his chainsaw while it's running. He lifts her up in the air and sort of, is like bouncing her up and down. And, she's just getting, because she's getting cut up. And then he throws her like 10 to 20 feet into a pile of garbage. And then Leatherface goes to try and kill Melody and Lila, who are the last two remaining. And then she, being Sally, is still alive. Barely alive, granted, to be fair. But she's still alive. Alive enough for her to shoot at Leatherface, and then Leatherface runs off. And then Lila is walking towards her saying, like, oh, I'm sorry and whatnot. And then Sally says, you got to kill him. Don't run away. Kill him, because if you don't, he'll haunt you for the rest of your life. And I'm thinking to myself, how are you alive? Not only did you get stabbed in the abdomen with a chainsaw that was running, by the way, it was still cutting. It was still on. But then you get thrown 10 to 20 feet. You're dead. You're beyond dead. And then she dies. I mean, she kind of dies off screen. She didn't really die off screen. She kind of just passed away right there, dropping the shotgun. So then Lila grabs the shotgun and then goes to hunt down Leatherface. But what a waste of a character that people have waited a long time to see again. Now, of course, the original actress that played Sally passed away a few years ago, so this is a new actress playing Sally, but it's still the same character. She's portraying that same character from the original film. And you just wasted her like that, and she's not even in the film for very long. That's the really crazy thing. We have our main focus being on these new characters. But you misuse a character that people have wanted to see, a classic character. One of the best final girls, you could say. I mean, she's not, compared to other final girls, she's sort of low on the bar, but she's still a final girl, and she's still a character that people cared about and wanted to see again after all these years, especially when they released a trailer saying that, she's coming back, right? So, waste of a good character. And then Leatherface, another misused character, in the sense that, I mean, he does his killings. That's fine. Once again, if you're going to this film just for the kills, just to see Leatherface cut some people up with a chainsaw, then you're going to enjoy this film just fine. But I think that horror films bringing back these characters, these classic slasher villains, are taking from Halloween in the sense that we're just going to make these guys immortal. Because Leatherface, again, he's taken a lot of damage, but the biggest damage that he's taken is towards the end of the film, where Lila is shooting Leatherface with a shotgun. And again, borrowing from Terminator and borrowing from Sarah Connor, she has the shotgun. Lila has the shotgun that she's shooting rounds into Leatherface. Behind Leatherface is a pool of water. It's in the abandoned building. There's a pool of water. It's a hole with water, and she's cocking the shotgun and shooting it. And it's very reminiscent of Terminator 2: Judgment Day, towards the end of that film, where Sarah Connor is shooting the T-1000 with her shotgun, so he can fall into the pool of molten steel or molten lead, whatever the hot liquid at the bottom. And then she runs out of bullets before she can get him to fall in. And then Melody shows up with the chainsaw and cuts, like does a cutting motion to Leatherface that splits his chin, cutting him, and then he falls into the pool and then basically looks like he's dead. And so then, them being the last two characters in Harlow, they get in that Tesla, they put it on autopilot, and they're driving off. Then all of a sudden, Leatherface shows up, breaks the window, pulls Melody out, decapitates her with his chainsaw, and then he does that same sort of dance from the ending of the first film. And then the film ends with Lila watching this happen, watching her sister get decapitated and him doing his stupid dance. And they're recreating the ending of the first film. And then the film ends. I mean, I guess there's a fine line between referencing previous films and then just ripping them off. Because, you do that same dance, you cut off Melody's head, which I thought was very unnecessary. I mean, they could have just left it there. Leatherface has his chin split open. He's in that pool dead. And then the two sisters go off and they live happily ever after or whatever. But this is a good old horror film, so you got to have that dark ending, right? You get one survivor and then the other gets her head cut off. And I just was uninterested. Leatherface isn't supposed to be immortal. He's supposed to be human. A very deranged, sadistic monster of a human, but a human nonetheless. This guy isn't Michael Myers. He isn't the essence of pure evil. He isn't evil incarnate. But it seems like it doesn't seem like it. That's what they've done. They've copied the Halloween 2018 formula with the Sarah Connor format of the character, coming back all these years later. And so overall, I was disappointed with this film. And this is coming from someone who isn't really a Texas Chainsaw fan. And so my expectations weren't very high on this film. And this is something that I have an issue with, and something that might continue to persist going into the future, is that these horror slasher films need to do new things. They need to take more risks, because they keep following this format and this formula instead of innovating. They're not innovating the horror slasher genre at all. This film is no different. And again, I'm going to reference Roseblood, a Friday the 13th fan film done by Peter Anthony. Because what I really enjoyed about that film is that it innovated the Friday the 13th franchise. It took the story in a completely different direction. It was a sequel to Part 7. And it didn't feature most of the stereotypical tropes commonly found in Friday the 13th films, i.e. the slutty females, the drug use, the characters they don't really give a shit about, right? Roseblood innovated the Friday the 13th franchise by giving us more character development, more focus on the human characters, the survivors that we're supposed to be rooting for. And also didn't bring in Jason until the very end. And yeah, a lot of people thought that was sort of like a dumb thing to do. People didn't like it. Me personally, I thought it was a good idea, considering that every other fan film, for the most part, has followed the same sort of formula from Friday the 13th films. So that's why I hold Roseblood to very high regards, because it innovated that franchise. And I was hoping that Texas Chainsaw would have innovated the story too, but it didn't. And in fact, based purely on me watching the first film, one of the biggest things that worked for Texas Chainsaw Massacre was that it wasn't just one slasher villain. It was an entire family. And that was one of the big focuses for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was the family aspect, right? But this film lacked in that. It lacked in that core value for Leatherface. I guess you could say that it was there with the caretaker woman, but it's so minuscule, like to the point where you could cut out her in there and nothing would really change in a way. Because yes, Leatherface is being cared for by this woman, it's because of her death that triggers this whole film to happen. But at the same time, they could have made little tweaks to the story and nothing would have been different. I mean, they could have cut her piece out completely and it really wouldn't have mattered. Leatherface would still go on a rampage and nothing would be different. So overall, I'm very, just disinterested in this film. A little disappointed. Again, not high expectations, but as someone who enjoyed the first film and sort of enjoyed parts of some of the other films that I've watched, I haven't watched all of them all the way through. But for what I watched, I mean, I really wasn't expecting much, but I was hoping that, maybe there would be something new here that could kind of hook my interest, but nothing really hooked my interest. Another thing that bothered me, and this is sort of like a miscellaneous thing, adding on to what I said earlier about the anti-gun message and the jab at Texans, being stereotypical rednecks with, carrying guns in a diesel truck. In Harlow, outside of the orphanage, there's a Confederate flag. It's a very old Confederate flag that's hanging there. And the character Dante notices that and he makes a big stink about it. And then when they go to the orphanage and they're talking to the old lady, they're having a conversation and she tells Dante that she doesn't have a problem with Negroes. She actually says that. And then Dante says, you know what, you can basically go fuck yourself. And he walks out. So, they make a jab at the Confederate flag and people always get butthurt about it. And it's like, you know what, I just don't really care. I don't know what you expect. I mean, Texas is a southern state. People still have Confederate flags. Big fucking deal. Who cares? Really, I mean, who cares at this point? It doesn't. Someone in some back part of the state is flying an old Confederate flag. You're getting butthurt about it. Grow up. Grow up. Okay. This movie is filled with all these little messages. The characters are boring and uninteresting. Leatherface is immortal. He can take shotgun shots. He can take getting a chainsaw splitting his chin open. You waste Sally. So my overall enjoyment is just like none. I don't want to watch this film again. That's how much I didn't like it. One other thing I'll mention, which I thought was kind of funny, was earlier in the film, a little convoy comes in full of the investors that are looking at the town. And it's the whole reason why the four characters, Dante, Lila, Melody, and Ruth, show up in the first place. So all these investors show up and they have a little party, and they have a little party on the bus because it starts raining. So their party has to be moved into the bus. And then Leatherface gets on the bus and everybody pulls up their phones, starts recording, live streaming, whatever. And one of the guys says, "You do anything, bro, you're going to get canceled, bro." And then they all die. I thought that was kind of funny because, cancel culture. You already know our thoughts. War and pop culture. Go check it out. But it was a really cheesy little line, and then Leatherface just goes on a rampage in the bus with the chainsaw, killing everybody in there. Funny thing is, there was enough people there that could have bomb rushed Leatherface and overpowered him. Yeah, he had a chainsaw, and a few people would have died trying to bomb rush him, but you had enough people to surround him, beat him to a pulp, take his chainsaw away. there's a lot that you could have done to mitigate the disaster that was the massacre in that bus. But everybody was just screaming and just staring and recording with their phones, right? So that was pretty, like, dumb. And yeah, again, horror movie, people do stupid shit in horror movies. Again, innovation. Innovate the franchises. Give us something that makes it fresh. Give us a fresh take on something. Take more risks. You know, do something completely different. I mean, look, you have an entire catalog of Texas Chainsaw films that probably do the same exact thing that every film has done in the franchise. So why not do something different? Do something that, you know, give us characters that we actually care about. You know, one of the arguments is like, oh, you know, you don't go to slasher films for characters you care about. It's like, well, why don't we change that? Why can't you give us characters that we care about? Why not give us a compelling story focusing on these characters? Lila had the most potential, even though I don't like the idea of trying to make an argument about anti-guns and school shootings in a horror film. I mean, the anti-gun thing, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is a horror film, and guns would be very useful, which Lila tries to shoot an AR-15 that was owned by the Texan guy from earlier in the film. And she just picks it up and she tries to shoot it at Leatherface, but then it doesn't work. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you know what? You don't know how to shoot weapons. But so you don't even try and, I mean, look, the AR-15 is a very powerful weapon. This is a quick side note. AR-15s are very powerful rifles. They'll be very useful against Leatherface. But you literally don't use it. You drop the damn thing and run away. But then you get a shotgun later on, and then you're shooting it just fine. And you know, there's no real consequences to her using the shotgun. She's shooting it as if she's basically like a pro in a way. She doesn't have any real kickback. She doesn't go flying. You know, she doesn't make any kind of mistakes with it. She's just picking it up and shooting it just fine. But I mean, the first time, you know, she grabs the AR-15 and then she just drops the damn thing because she couldn't shoot it. It was stupid. So overall, very dissatisfied with this film. You can watch it or don't watch it. I wouldn't usually say don't go watch a film because you should be able to make your own conclusions. You know, I'm just another guy on the internet giving his opinion on a film. Many people have already done it. Many people like this film. People I know like this film. But you should be able to make your own decision. You know, listen to people, review it, you know, hear what they like and don't like about it, and then either watch the film or take what somebody said and just kind of make your own conclusion, you know, do whatever. But for me, if I were to give this a rating, like on a numerical scale, I would say that it's like a 1 out of 10, maybe a 2. You know, just a film that really is, I didn't have any real interest, so I'm sort of indifferent about it as a Texas Chainsaw fan, which I'm just like, I like the original film and that's pretty much it. But as a moviegoer reviewing another horror film, it's average. You know, it's not a really good horror film. It doesn't do anything to innovate the franchise or the genre. It's just your typical cookie cutter horror film that took aspects from other films, and in certain cases better films, and then put it together with this. And so you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Oh, and then there's a post-credit scene, which I didn't watch, but I was told by a friend that Leatherface goes back to the old Sawyer house. It shows him walking back. So, you know, it's like teasing a sequel, I guess. And who knows if it's going to happen or not. If it does, all right, whatever. If it doesn't, well, oh well. So that's it. Special thanks to Mother Mulder, J-Man from J-Man's Movie Cave, and Kyle Curtis Flett, part of the Dark Ether Files Patreon. We appreciate your support. And with that all being said, I'm Special Agent Spooky Clutter.
I'm Special Agent Carter Sauce.
Special Agent Dr. Richtofen.
And until next time, fellow investigators, remember,
the entertainment is out there.